Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to show you how to Dockerize your Node.js and MongoDB project in a secure manner by setting password on your MongoDB container. Let's dive in. First of all, we need to initialize a Node.js project by running this command. Note that no view means not installed template engine, for example JIT or another template engine. Anyway, now we have a empty nodejs, empty express project, and we need to install our dependencies by calling npm install command. After that, we should install MongoDB, so npm install MongoDB. And also I prefer to use Mongos. It's totally optional but makes life easier, so I recommend you to install Mongos as well. npm install Mongos. Well, we have an empty project, so let's test if everything works perfectly. Oops, it says no default engine because we used no view in this project, so we should change something to make this work. Open routes, index, and change. Make it commands and rest it, and add some string. Works. Stop this and run it once more again and open Firefox. It works. Well, it's time to set up our database. We should open app.js because app starts from app.js. Technically, it starts from being www, but app.js loads our router. So if we want to write some logic to run at the start of our project, we can write it right here. And let's import mongoose const mongoose equal require mongoose, and here call mongoose.connect. First parameter should be URI, that is our connection string. So let's create a constant connection string and pass the connection string here. So we pass our local host MongoDB localhost 270 and some database name, mydb for example, or anything else, and pass it here, connection string. And if everything works perfectly, we should get our connection in res, and if we have some trouble in connecting to database, cache will execute it. Add some logs here, console.log, and pass URL, or simply write a literal string. Error in connecting to database. And if everything works good, console.log connected to database, right? And of course has our router here. Good. Let's see what's happening. If I restart the server, connected to database successfully, and we have our router here. And if we pass it wrong, for example, I change port to a wrong number, and restart server. We will get some error here. It takes some time, but the point is we cannot see our routes here. Well, so far so good. And we need to add our Docker files. That is a Docker file and a Docker compose file also. Let's just start with Docker file. Docker file. First of all, we have to say Docker, what the base image is. That for us is node and version, for example, 20, but I prefer to use 18, 17, and 1, just because we have this version installed on our server. And copy, before copy, say what is the working directory, that is /use or /src/app, and copy here to here. This means copy everything in here to current directory, that is working directory in our container. Of course, running npm install to install dependencies. Set environments variable for ports, that is 3000, and expose 3000. And of course, the last command, npm start. Well, our Docker file is created. We have a simple Docker file to run our Node.js project. It could be a little bit different, but I think it's just fine. And of course, a Docker compose.yam to tell the Docker how to create our project image from Docker file and also use Mongo database. First of all, we have to determine which version we want to use. We want version 3 and list of services. Our service, we call it backend. And first of all, we should say how to create image. Build, like this. Build. Single dot means current directory. That's because our Docker file is alongside with Docker Compose. We just leave it with a single dot. Ports that you want to map 9001 to our 3000, and 3000 comes from our Docker file and this environment variable because our image exposes its 3000 ports to outside. And environments, we like to name it same as this. I say then leave the value to determine it later on. And also volumes for node modules, it's optional. The path is here. And also for our assets, /public. So far so good. Add another service for Mongo, where image is Mongo version. I prefer to use version 4.4. That's just because our server hardware supports 4.4, but not version 5 and 6 available. But if your server supports, you can replace this with any version you want. And also ports. We can add port mapping for MongoDB, but This is optional. If you want to access your database from outside of your VPS or server, you should map your MongoDB ports to outside or use different network mode. But if you don't want to use it from outside, just your Node.js service use MongoDB, you don't need to define any port mapping here. That's better for security to don't map it. Any port you want to Mongo default ports and volume to make your data persistent. Data/data/db. Change it to more readable name, for example, Mongo data. And to environment variable, I've copied them. To determine what's username and password we want to set for our database, everything you pass it here sets as your database username, and everything you pass it here sets as database password. Well, and passwords, everything we defined here. This and this. Here. Well, so far so good. And that a depends on good. Okay, everything seems good, but we have to set our connection string here. That is mongdb / or service name or our public IP. But before this, we have to pass username, colon, password, password, address, colon, port. Note that if you using service name, you should pass internal ports number, but if you want to use your IP address instead of your service name, you should pass your mapped port number. Well, so far so good, and let's back to app.js and tell connection string check if process.env.connection string available, use this, and if it's not available, use this constant. That's because if we're using Docker or we are in production mode, we and to pass connection string as environment variable, set connection string from here. But if you are in developing mode and we don't have connection string as a environment variable, pass connection string from here. Well, everything seems to be good. Let's check if everything works or not. So we have to upload our codes to a server or VPS or everything else. I use CyberDuck to upload my files to my server. I know this is not the best way to deploy code to server, but it's one of the most simple. And make a SSH connection to my server. SSH username outside your IP address. Run Docker compose up-d to build our project. Check if Everything works. Oops, it seems yes, everything works. Hope you enjoy and thank you for watching. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe my channel and also put the comments below. See you soon.